Tell me when we're going live.
We're live now. Hey, everybody. I just wanted to do what I always do when I first start off, is just check audio levels and make sure that we're not destroying your eardrums. And let's hear a little voice of Tom. Tom's here.
Hey all. Hopefully you can hear me.
How's that all feeling? How's that all sounding to everyone? Today we're great. Okay, so we've got one good. Today we're not only, Tom is very loud. Tom, that's up to you. You might want to turn that down just a bit. Today
Hey,
we're going to
how's that?
be
Is that a bit better?
go down just a bit, just a bit.
How's that?
That's better. We're feeling a lot better over there.
Did it get a little quieter?
Yeah, now it's just beautiful. It's just beautiful.
Okay.
All right.
Can someone on the chat confirm if the? Okay, great.
Tom's still pretty loud. Wow, Tom.
Okay,
Wow.
what's that commanding voice? Um, Let me switch to a lower quality microphone.
How's that? Is that any better? Am I still blowing out people's eardrums?
It actually sounds great, but it's not your nice microphone. Somebody said, just don't get too excited, Tom. That's all.
I'll do my best.
Yeah. People's like cochlears are like vibrating like in a very, very erratic fashion from your loud voice. Okay, it sounds perfect now. Great. Okay. Uh, all right, so I just want to introduce Tom Lowry, who is a designer advocate. And we also had a question previously in the stream about what is a design, or I think a designer advocate. And I'll let Tom introduce himself and then explain that question.
Okay. Yay, everyone. I'm Tom. I've been on the Figma team for about a year and a half, and like you all, I'm started out as a passionate Figma user that helped adopt Figma at the previous company that I was working at, and just felt really passionate about the you know the overall mission of the company and the goal of the product. It really resonated with me, and sort of had the opportunity to join the team. So I work just outside of Toronto, up in Canada. So it's probably a little colder than where many of you are watching from today. And what is a designer advocate? We are, I like to sort of flip it, where most people think that we're some sort of salesperson for the company, but in a lot of ways we're more so advocates for the users. So as designers, we'll try to like connect with a lot of users through our community. Sometimes we work with our accounts team who are working with new users or teams that are looking to adopt Figma and sort of help them get on board. And at the end of the day, we want to make sure that the things that you want to do in Figma can be accomplished, and we try to sort of be your megaphone internally. So hopefully that helps describe a little bit what a designer advocate does. Do you have anything to add, Rogie?
Well, I mean, considering that Tom is teaching me every day as we go what it is to be a designer advocate, I would say straight from the horse's mouth is probably better. But I know that my role has changed just a little bit from what a lot of other designer advocates are doing, in that I'm doing a lot more right now currently live streams and interfacing with the public on social media, in Slack and things like that, and on like the Figma community beta, as opposed to doing a lot of like product demos for like teams. I'll absolutely be doing that, but right now I'm focusing on this just a little bit more. So my job just is a little bit different, but it's still an interface between the designers and Figma as a team, and sort of being a mouthpiece for that, and expressing any issues or any things that you're sort of facing. If you need some help, any of that, sort of being that in between, that glue in between. Well, I think we have
I
plenty of
like that.
plugins to go into. What are you thinking, Tom?
Yeah, I think we do. I think that no one could see me talking because I think you probably have to switch. We still have some work to do on how we do multiple people sharing screens in this. And I think you have to switch to my input so that it updates when I'm talking, but hopefully, I think that's working.
That's perfect. So let's go ahead. I think that means, and we're going to test this tech out. We're trying to figure out how to get Tom, who is in Canada, to live stream to me in Utah, and for us to be able to sort of like cross pollinate our streams. So here we go. Let's see if we can see Tom. Tom, your webcam is perfectly sized into the sidebar, so you're great. I think we're ready
All
to
right,
roll.
hopefully you can. Okay. This is strange because I'm just trying to understand. Hopefully people can see what I'm doing in real time. Sorry, I'm just watching the stream to see when it catches up because I know there'll be a little bit of a delay. Rogie, what are you seeing on my screen?
I'm
Do I have a
seeing,
plugin open?
yeah, you have Themer open. You've created a beautiful gray square box, and next to it, oh, and now you've moved to Figma Community. All right.
Okay, okay. It must be catching up or something because I am not in Figma Community at all right now. I'm on the canvas and I have no plugins open.
All right. Yeah, it says
Um,
there seems to be a mad delay, is what we're hearing. We could go ahead and just let
do
you
you
try to
want
wing it.
to switch to your screen? Do you want to switch to
No problem.
you stream and then you can, yeah, cool.
Okay, so that was one of our tests. We were trying to see if we could potentially get in Tom's feed because there's so much contextually that he's doing opening plugins and this and that. So, but that didn't work. So it looks like we're going to, I'll start off uh, and talk about something pretty simple and easy, quick and easy. Um, and, uh, and that plugin is skewed at. Okay, so let's say I'm typing in some text here and my text is, hello there. And I'm going to use K to switch to scale mode to scale this text up here, not just scale the box for that text. One thing in Illustrator and in a lot of programs, it's easy to sort of just hover these, hover next to the side of your text box and be able to skew this. Now, this isn't a feature in Figma yet, and I wish that it was, and I know that a lot of designers wish that it was. And so I think right now a good stopgap is just to use some plugins to help get there. And one of those is called SkewDat. So if you go into the community beta and type in SkewDat, and I believe it's all one word, is that correct? Yeah, one word. You'll see that it's called SkewDat. Great, cute title, cute name. I've already got it installed. So what we're going to do now is go to plugins and just go to SkewDat. At first, when I used this plugin, I thought it was going to be destructive, meaning it would basically take my text and then render it as like a vector object. And I was a little bit bummed, strangely so, because I didn't even use it and I was already bummed with it. But you can adjust skews here and there. The beautiful thing about this, which apparently I'm finding out is now my new tagline, is like I say the beautiful thing about this for everything. But the beautiful thing about this is that this text is still editable. These objects are still editable. I actually have only used it on text, very strangely so. So let's go ahead and see how it works on a mockup. That's pretty rad. I'm gonna go ahead and just undo that. But I love this plugin, pretty easy to work with. And it's super, super fun to jump in here. I love that the text is editable. I love that oftentimes you can do this with auto layouted things and it still works. That's as much as there is to share about that one. It's a great little utility, especially if you're trying to do this kind of stuff to your text. Tom, I think you're going to be in the driver's seat.
Another good one.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gonna be driving remotely and I'll direct. I'll be hovering art director on Rogie.
So imagine in your minds right now.
Someone was asking.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
No, someone was asking how to find clay mockups for iPhones, and I know that was one of the ones that we wanted to show. So maybe we can do the clay mockup 3D plugin next, and we can just use the screen that we have on here, this analytics screen, to demo it.
That sounds great. Imagine, if you will, that scene from Ghost where Patrick Swayze is wrapped around Demi Moore and helping sort of guide the pottery. Tom is my Patrick Swayze. We'll make it work. Okay, so Tom, what's that plugin called?
That plugin is called, if you just search for Clay under plugins,
Clay.
there's one called Clay Mockups 3D.
Clay Mockups 3D. Great. Okay, so I've got that installed. And what would I do next? Just sort of, would I click on a frame of something?
No, you can just launch the plugin and then you can choose a mockup. And I think that one size already
Oh, great.
sized
Okay.
for iPhone 11.
All right, great. So let's see here. All right, so I'm going to look up Clay Mockups 3D. All right, great.
Also a good tip is for anyone who doesn't know the command /tip to search for plugin names as well.
So tell me how to do that, Patrick. Tell me how to do that command again.
Cool. So if you hit command /, it will open the little hamburger menu from the top left. It'll place the focus on the search, and then any of your plugin names or any of the commands that appear in Figma menus, you can search for them there. So it's like a really quick way to access plugins.
So it's almost like
or
an Alfred
certain
or
features
something
in
like
Figma.
that, like an Alfred or like an app. You can just
Yeah.
search anything in here. Okay, so Clay Mockups
Exactly.
3D.
So if you were to type in Clay,
Perfect. All right, just a second.
and then you just hit enter or you use your mouse to select it.
Okay, just a second.
And then with this one, you should just be able to select a frame, and then it will generate an image.
All right, so it looks like I can just, Tom, since we're sort of adapting here, I went ahead and shared my screen with you so you can see live what I'm doing here via Zoom.
Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, I need you to be able to have context here, being my true Patrick that you are. All right, I'm gonna come in here. Oh, I can just type it in, it looks like, okay. That's
Yeah, you can put in a color.
It's a little
obviously, you could put in a really funky color, but yeah. But obviously, black is always a good one, or white, or maybe like a gray for silver. And then you can just select the frame, the analytics frame on the left on the canvas.
Oh, this is so cool. So I could actually choose the two different devices, and then I can actually render a frame onto the screen, and then I can work within that
So
if I wanted to.
Yeah, and you can click existing artwork. So if you click on the analytics one off to the left,
no way, it just updates.
Appear,
oh, that's super rad.
Yeah, it just updates, which is really cool. And then you can rotate it around to get the angle right.
Like this, where I just don't even see my interface at all. Great.
That's right. You just show your Clay Apple device.
Or I can just, looks like it has presets, yeah, for what might look good here. I would imagine then save as image. And that's
and
ready.
then it puts an image on the canvas with like a transparent background. That way you can, if you're building out your portfolio or something and you want to have a little hero image, you can quickly generate those.
That is so awesome. I thought I would just grab, like, this was on the community and it's just a bunch of really like eye tantalizing designs. So I figured I would just dump them in there and then see like, well, how does this work with that? So Clay Mockups 3D. And will it just do, oh yeah, look at that. That's nice. Oh, that's super great. Something similar to that, and I've already downloaded it as well, but that's the Vectory 3D one. And I wanted to showcase that. Now, Vectory 3D is a little bit different in that I think that there's only some models and then some are free, and then they've got sort of like a freemium model. And I messed around with this last night with a friend. This is a little different. It's not as intuitive, but let's say I have this iPhone mockup here. I can click this frame and then say use frame. And then it's there, and it's a little bit, I like the Clay mockup a lot more just because it's like, it's not all so photorealistic, but this one actually has shadows, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, this one's really nice, and also I believe they have other like non-device things. So if you were using Figma to maybe like mock up a brand asset on something.
So for instance, I wanted to use this UI on my.
That's right. Like you work for a soft drink company and or a beer company, and you really need those mock-ups.
You really need this. This is great. I actually did this with a friend last night. We were just kind of having some fun with this. So I just kind of uh, what did I do? Okay, so I just drew a random frame onto the screen, and then being the artist that I am, I was like, oh yeah, okay. First of all, get this out of the way. Uh, but I was getting in here, and I'm like, let's do a diamond gradient, and then no, wait, let's put multiple color stops, and let's make it all vibrant and juicy and delicious. And so it was just cool to see how it worked. I don't know what the actual application of this whole thing would necessarily be, but then I can use this frame here on this can, and it was so rad. I loved it. I thought it would be oh yeah, we also noticed this as well, that apparently this kind of thing just makes it chug. Um, Apparently so much to the point where it just doesn't work. Let's see if it works. What do you think, Tom?
There we go. Yeah, I love it.
Yeah, and so they have all kinds
I'm
of weird
seeing a future for you to join the Arizona Iced Tea team. They need an update.
stuff. I think this
We
is
just
great.
need those taller cans.
That's great. And then I'm seeing a future for me as like sort of a 3D designer in this, where basically all I really have to do is use vectory 3D models and then slap my angular gradients on. Uh, Look,
It worked.
that's beautiful.
So now you can manipulate that and then insert an image into the document with your orbs.
That's right.
That's the carbonation.
That's right. So I've just like, look at this. I'm a brand designer now, and I've created my new brand. This is Rogie as Orbi, and I'm in. It's great. All right. So
Cool.
Tom, you're gonna have to art direct me on the next plugin now.
All right. So one that I really like is is called Contrast. I don't know if you have this one installed, but you can bring it up on the community if you want. There's a few different contrast plugins for dealing with color contrast, and I feel like I've used a bunch of them, but this one is by far my favorite, by Alex Carr, because it's got some pretty cool features. That's the first one there, called Contrast. So go ahead and install that one.
All right.
And then I'll draw some things on the canvas that you can play around with.
Oh, you're doing great, Patrick.
So if you want to, cool. So if you want to run the plugin, and then you can use your command / trick.
I'm curious about writing the plugin too for contrast. Do I need to select? I'm always confused about this. Do I need to select something when I'm on this canvas when I start these, or do I just run them?
You just run this plugin. I mean, I think most plugins, at least I think the ones that have been where people have put in the most effort to develop, if it does require a selection, it's usually the plugins that don't have a UI. And in that case, they'll usually surface a message on the bottom of the screen that just says like, please select a frame or something.
Got it.
So with this one, it uses the onSelection API to update as you pick things. So if you select the text color hello, even just select text, it will sort of figure out what the background is behind that text, and then it'll give you your color contrast ratings.
That's actually
and then,
really cool.
Even if we were to go in here and like right now I'm adjusting the color so that it's like really light, there's not a lot of contrast, you'll see it fails, and then when we get to one point, you can see more of that. And so one of the cool things that I like about this plugin is that you can use it contextually based on whatever you have as a selection. But if you were to, if you flip over to the second tab in the plugin under select, there's another one called scan. And if you hit start scan, it'll find all of the color contrast issues on the page. And if you click on any of those text boxes in the plugin, it'll take you right to that particular text box. And then, and you can also change the sort of the threshold. So right down at the bottom, you'll see there's two check boxes, one for AA and one for AAA. And
okay.
if you were to uncheck AAA, it obviously eases up the restrictions a little bit.
Got it. And apparently this is finding some maybe elements that are hidden or under things. So let me see if I just delete this mock-up here and just kind of work with
so if you delete this
ones.
and you want to, So it might find some of those things pass AA, but they fail AAA. But if we were to go in and make changes to make one of those things. Now there's one really cool feature, which is one of the biggest reasons why. I don't know if anyone can see that I've just added this giant fish image to the document.
Yeah, I'm seeing it. I'm zooming out so people can see it.
Yeah. Are you seeing the fish? Cool. So one of the cool things is that it also does a pretty good job with images as well. So if you go back to the select tab in the plugin,
okay,
and you choose and you select that text box, there's an enable smart sampling option below. So if you click on that little, you can turn that on, and it will sample, like right now it's taken 32 samples from behind the image. So when you're putting text on the image, this is a really great way. And you'll see, like, as I
you're kidding
as I move
me.
this around, it's like updating that. So you'll see here, if I go down to this dark area of the frame, it like updates the color contrast. So it kind of gives you an idea of like where it's safe to put text on an image like this. And then of course, yeah, you could totally just add some, however you want to solve the contrast issues. You know, we could just, like, you know, maybe add like a dark overlay or something on it. And then of course that might allow you to place it in other places a little bit better. And there's a little progress bar on those little tabs that kind of shows you how many of the samples it's clearing color contrast with. So anyways, this is like a really well-developed plugin, and it's got a lot of like really clever features like that. And yeah, great, really useful. And then the scan is great because like you don't have to let contrast sort of get in the way while you're just like iterating on designs, but then you can run the scan and then have it walk through and make those changes. And then this is sort of one of the things that I often think about is, where are there opportunities to sort of like use different plugins together, because certain plugins are like focused on like one thing. And so for example, I'm sure a lot of people have already used this plugin, but there's a really great plugin called Simulayer. And you could imagine if you have a contrast issue that's like duplicated across a bunch of different screens, you can use something like Simulayer to select all of the same elements based on a criteria. I don't know if you want to demo that one. Maybe people have already seen Simulayer because it's been out for a while, but
let's go ahead and demo. Let's do a few questions. The first of which is mine. So first of all, this is really amazing, Tom, and I never actually knew about this. I love the smart scan thing, and that's incredible. My question is, right now, if I rescan, I see this. Oh, I see. It says, oh, I fixed all the issues and they went away. So I'm going to back up a little bit here in what I did, and kind of showcasing some of our selection colors as well at work with this. So if I hit rescan, let's just say we're only going for AAA. And if I rescan, they're all failing right now, as you can see here. And so my thought was, okay, I'm just going to select everything here. And let's say these are 3 different mock-ups. And I went through the colors over here and detached a few of them just so I could see the values. And I noticed that we've got this white on here. So if I just bump up this opacity value on that white, do I have to rescan at this point or not? Or is it with the contrast plugin?
I believe that you have to rescan, and then it kind of does an updated version of the report.
Okay, and that's exactly what happened. It looks like once I rescanned, it fixed it.
And there's also an option at the bottom. There's a little radio or a toggle switch, sorry, where you can show the passing layers as well. Great. And then it tells for the ones that pass, depending on your crate. Like right now, you're going only AAA, and of course, yeah, you can filter that down, and you can enable the smart sample for layers. I believe the reason why smart sample is disabled on this plugin is just because there's probably minimal use cases where you have like a lot of text that's hovering over images, and I think it just improves the performance of the plugin so that it doesn't have to do that smart sample. But you can turn it on as well if you have it like a heavily image-based design as well.
Right, I see that plugin, that little toggle here, enable smart sample for layers. So it must be pretty computationally expensive, but If you need it live, looks like it's there. That is okay. That is so much cooler than I thought it was gonna be. That's amazing. Do you want to show us
Yeah,
similar?
no, it's a yeah. So this plugin, I think some people already know, and some people were singing its praises. But Simulator is one of my favorite plugins. Dave Williams has been a powerhouse on the plugin side as well. And for those of you who remember Patty for Sketch, Dave was the developer for that plugin, and then he started building some Figma plugins as well, which have been really great. So yeah, Simulator is super helpful. And one of the things that this one does is it lets you sort of like make a selection, which can be, if you want to run the plugin, you can make a selection that is only sort of like the children within one particular frame.
Oh, wow.
Or you can make it sort of like go across the entire page. So there we go, Simulator. So now if you were to select your frame,
Okay.
like maybe select one of those analytics frames, and then you can have it, if you look, I'm just looking at your screen here. You can select a bunch of properties of things that you want to select, right? So for example, I want to select everything that has the same fill color or the same fill opacity, and you can combine these things. So for example, let's just say you had like a screen that was like full of icons that were all set up at 24 pixels by 24 pixels, but you had like other text objects and other things on the canvas, and you only wanted to select those like squares. You could select one thing and then select other things that match. So like another example might be,
Oh, I see. So when it comes to like this width, it's matching things that are the width of this frame. But if I were to do, like, let's say for some reason I knew that I had sized all of these bars in this graph to the same size, and I could say size width here. And I know that in Illustrator and other tools, there's like select similar stroke width. And a lot of times you get into a weird scenario sometimes where, and just to illustrate this point, let's just say you had a star that you drew, and that star had like a 4-point stroke width, and you had a few of those, you had cloned them. All of a sudden you decided, oh crap, I need to be able to like resize these things. So say you use K, and that is to go to the scale tool. Now, when you scale these things like this, if you actually select one, now you'll notice that this stroke is actually 2.62. I'm going to turn down the music just a bit so we can. All right. So the problem now is that it's not actually the stroke width that it used to be. So then if I go select similar stroke width, select layers. Okay, Tom, you have to help me. How come it's not working? So I did this. I'm going here to this stroke or this star.
Yep.
And I'm going to go to
and then run the
Simulator. And I can just do your thing. There we go. So I'm going to select this. Okay, so stroke width. Select all layers with the same stroke width. Select layers. Oh, for some reason it worked. Which is perfect.
Yeah, and then you'll also notice too that sometimes you might want to like scope those things as well. Like, so for example, I don't know if you can see, give me another, I'm trying to think of something that's like duplicated within this frame. You can, when you run the plugin, you might only want to make selections that are within the same frame.
Okay.
So like if you select that text box that I have now.
The weekly stats?
The weekly stats, yeah, and run the plugin.
Okay.
And then you'll notice that there's like a box there that says limit selection within root frame. So if you want to only match the things that are like within that frame, you can just check that box. So like right now, if you want to pick other things that have the same fill color, there's other white things on there. You could say select the fill.
Let's give that a try. Fill color, same fill colors.
And then just say, and then just say select layers. And then it will select all of those things that have that same fill color.
Got it.
Based on whatever you had selected within that parent frame. So that can be really handy too.
That's incredible.
Maybe we can move on to some text ones, because there's a couple. The one thing that I'm really liking about the sort of like the ecosystem of plugins in Figma is that there are a lot of plugins that do sort of similar things, but have sort of like a different way of working.
Mhm.
So the one thing that is really nice is that you can kind of find one that does something that you want, that like you just like sort of like the overall usability of. So the one that I was going to recommend was one by Jordan Singer called Text Edit.
Okay.
And I'll throw the link in the chat.
Oh, that's
while
perfect.
You
Thank
install
you.
that one.
Jordan Singer. I've only got Cash App and Ditto.
Yeah, it's Jordan Singer works at Cash App, and so I think he's been releasing plugins from their team.
How dare you
He's
know
built
somebody's
some really cool
name? How
stuff.
dare you know somebody's name opposed to the company they work for? Tom knows all the designers, and that's awesome. Okay, so we've got Text Edit. I am not going to look at the plugin page, and I'm going to let you teach me.
Cool. So all you got to do is run the plugin, and it's going to find text objects that exist on multiple frames. So if you just do your little your quick command / technique,
Great.
and type in Text Edit. There you go. And launch that one there. And then you'll see it picks up on all of these like possible text options. So for example, if you scroll on that list, you should see like weekly stats in there somewhere.
There it is.
And then you can just click on it.
And it's auto-selecting all three at the same time?
Yeah, and then you just edit the text and it'll edit them across all the frames. So if you've got like stuff that exists across multiple frames. And the one thing that is like really nice about some of these plugins, there's another one called Retextify that works kind of similar. You can just hit tab as well. Like if you hit tab while you're in the plugin UI, it will just move down to like all of them. So like if you want to replace a bunch of things, you can just use your keyboard and just hit tab, tab, tab. You can search for a layer as well, and it filters down that list.
This would have been a lifesaver. Last year at Dribbble, we were making a sort of like the Dribbble end of year report on the designer survey. And it was all a PDF that we were creating, and it all worked out great at Figma. But I remember being like, oh crap, I need to like replace all these things. But I ended up using a different plugin that is not even as good as this one. This one is really good.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I like about this one is that it's so simple. The UI is really nice. The attention to detail with like the keyboard shortcuts is nice as well.
Great.
And then that one works really good when you have like duplicated objects. And then the other one that is really handy, and again, this one's been out for a while, but I mean, I just liked mentioning it because it's so useful, is Find and Replace by Jackie Choi at Microsoft. I'll throw that in the chat as well. Someone said they came in late. We posted a link up to the, if you can see the chat history, it's called Text Edit, and it's by Cash App. So hopefully you can find it when you search for plugins. And I just put a link to another one in there called Find and Replace. I don't know if you want to fire that one up, Rogie.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's fire it up. I'm still, you can see that my muscle memory is still not developed yet. I'm still used to right-clicking. Sorry, Tom, don't be offended. Don't be offended at me.
Oh, no worries. If you go for the right click, that's cool too.
Go for the right click. I am definitely not a power user. Look at me. Go ahead.
So this one is a little bit different in the sense that you can just search for a text string, and that text string could be within a certain thing, almost like how you use Find and Replace in like a document editing software. So if you wanted to just replace monthly, you could just put in a search string for monthly.
Got it. Okay. The UI was confusing me a little bit. I thought this was actually like a label but here I am learning it now. So let's say I want to say 537 because I know that's text in there, and I want to replace with Tom. And then I want to replace all. So it doesn't is replace very similar to like Google Docs or any kind of replace, just one by one?
Yeah, exactly. And then it moves to the next one. So you could do replace all and replace them all in one well.
Okay.
But this one is specifically nice where you have like a specific word that you want to do a find and replace that might be nested within a text box.
Right. So we want
just
like
replace that one word.
2019 budget, and I'm saying like I want to do 2018 budget, or in this case, maybe it's just 2019 with 2018, right?
Exactly. Yeah, and then you could hit replace all and replace it everywhere.
Yeah, totally. Say these mock-ups you're updating for the next year or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah. So
What a simple
that's it.
utility. A layer name can actually also be, so like if I wanted analytics to be like dashboard or something, I could do that.
Yeah, exactly. You can use it to rename layers. And then again, I believe it also works sort of like in the same way where you could just rename like one part of it rather than just renaming the whole layer.
Oh, and this is pretty
And
smart
there's a,
too. Exact match and a text beginning. So a little bit of almost regex like features, it looks like.
exactly, without you having to know regex. So you can kind of just, yeah, it's a lot of really cool features. It's been a really well thought out plugin for
I
sure.
really like it. Yeah, that's great. I think I have one too. Oh, I'll just share one that I ran into a while back. We were developing that PDF like I was talking about, and I'm going to talk about, Tom, if you want to go ahead and get the URL for this, insert big image, I'll talk about that.
Oh, I love this one.
Yeah, so insert big image, I've already got it installed, apparently, but I'm not sure if you all have ever ran into an issue where you've got a massive, massive image and say it's greater than 4,000 pixels. I think it's like the limit in Figma is like 4,000 by 4,000 pixels or something. But
That's right, in either direction.
Yep. See if I can demonstrate this here.
Are you looking for a massive image?
I'm literally typing in the most predictable string into Google right now, and that is huge image.
I'll talk through it. So one of the things that Figma does, and this is not a limitation necessarily of Figma, but some of the the canvas technology is maximum image size. And so it's not to say that you're limited to that number of pixels, but you are in one image. And so we've heard this feedback sometimes where you have maybe like a screenshot of a really, really long scrolling website that you just want to like paste into Figma because you want to mock up some things on top of it. And then sometimes Figma will resize that image down to hit the 4K limit so that you can import it. This insert big image will help you get around that by sort of stitching it together of multiple images without scaling.
Yep, and so that's perfect, Tom. Thanks for doing that. Give me just a bit of time to get this image. That's exactly where I ran into this. This was at Dribble. What we were trying to do is we were trying to bring the old design system into Figma, but we didn't actually have a lot of sketch files for a lot of these things. A lot of these things were actually designed in code by Dan Cederholm and Rich. And so what ended up happening is like we'd come to pages and we'd be like, well, we need a representation of this page, but it's not even in our design system at all, just because it's kind of an outlier. So we need to be able to comment on it. And of course, we would want to use Figma's commenting features and stuff like that. So so what we would do is something like this. We'd use a capture thing. You can see all my cool thumbnails here, but we would use like a Chrome website capture, and you just dump this image in here, right? Notice though, we've hit that limitation. The height is 4,096 and the width is 880. So it kind of clamped the height here. And what you can see here is sometimes this works, but this is not very high fidelity. You can see that everything's very grainy. And so when you don't want that, and you really want to have, in certain cases, let's say this website was twice as long, this thing would be almost illegible. You wouldn't even be able to read these titles. And so, just a second here. I'm gonna change up the music just a bit, a little softer here. And so, using insert big image, you can do this. So I'm gonna right click and go to, look at me, I still do that, insert big image. It gives you a little bit of a well here to drop files into. So I'll just do the same thing that I did before. I'm gonna go to this screen capture from Figma. It'll upload it. And the way that it achieves this is that, and you can see now that it's a 3,600 wide image with a huge height. And the way that it achieves this is just kind of how you would think. It just cuts it up into segments and it just keeps bringing them in. That way it can still honor the technology limit that I believe Canvas or whatever it is, WebGL or whatever it is that Figma's working with. But now we have a more high fidelity mockup that we can come in here and comment on. So this works really well, especially if you're trying to show off like a really high fidelity mockup in a presentation mode or something like that. That's as simple as it is, but you can get around that technology barrier.
Yeah, that's one of those little utilities that I never even thought to look for, and I had thought, oh, it'd be really great if we had that. And then I looked one day when I think when you and I were talking, and I was like, lo and behold, there it was.
That's speaking of little utilities. Do you want to show off the one that you used on your soundboard?
Yeah, I'll dump some artwork into the file.
And I'll search
I'm
for
just
it and link up the community.
Yeah, the noise plugin is great. I think it's useful at least.
Perfect. Let me go back to that document that we're in and see what you've been doing. Oh yeah, let's get in there.
You can turn off your layout grids as well, because I've got some layout grids that I use just to sort of, there you go. And if you zoom in on all the little dials, you'll notice that there's, or even like the background of the thing, there's like a light texture, just so like the plastic looks kind of like a little bit old and not too smooth. And all of that was done using the noise plugin. So if you want to fire up the noise plugin, we can show people how it works.
Look at me, I'm hitting Command / and I am a professional. I feel good. Let's go. All right.
Yeah, so what noise will do is you can sort of like scale, it basically generates an image of the noise and you can control the parameters. So what you'll want, depending on how big that you're using, you want to define an image size. So usually I make mine pretty big, like maybe it's just like, I don't know, like 1,000 by 1,000 or something. And then you sort of control that density.
And
then
it looked like you, if I can see here and reference your drawing here, it looks like you they're a little bit more sparse. They're kind of out.
Yeah, mine are sparse, but you could imagine depending on the type of,
right.
And then if you hit the check mark.
Okay, great. And then I just want to check out invert. Okay, look at that. We have like the Star Wars landscape if we want, or the Starscape. It's perfect.
Exactly, you can get like white speckles, and then it just generates an image. And so the nice thing about the way this works is that you can just copy that. A lot of people kind of miss this sometimes, but if you kind of go to where the image fill is, you can just click on the edge of the image, and you can hit copy, and then you could draw like a circle or something on the canvas.
Or in my case, a star.
Or in your case, a star, and then hit paste. And then it's going to paste that image as an additional fill on top of that shape. And then you can go into that the image fill properties, and then you could change things like blend modes or the opacity of it. So if you wanted this to have a particular blend mode or whatever, you could toggle that, and then you can adjust the opacity on top of like an existing color. And yeah, for when you're doing illustrations or things that you want to have like a little bit of like subtle texture to it, it's a nice one. I missed that sometimes from using sort of the noise filter in Photoshop. So being able to just have a way of doing that in Figma is really nice. And then one cool thing, this is sort of like a little Figma hack, is that if you want to reuse this, let's just say you want to reuse this texture of like this particular noise in this particular color, you can actually just save it as a you could actually save this as a style that you could apply to anything. So if you just hit there and just call that, I don't know, pink noise, coral noise, however fancy you want to get with the naming. Now you can just have a bunch of other shapes, and then you can apply that noise everywhere.
Yeah, I actually used that same exact hack in doing some, not really a hack, but feature in doing some design work as well. Like we just put some of our illustrations that we commonly used for areas, we just tucked those right in as a fill. And so it was just like, you could just go into your library here. Now, granted, when you did go into this library, notice that these little swatches are pretty small. So it's hard to tell what an illustration is specifically, other than the tool text, because it is so small. But for the most part, it honestly did work. And I do like that. Tom, one thing I've always wondered about, like, and you kind of brought it up here, but let's say this pink noise here, I wanted to save this here as pink noise, and I've got that blend mode and everything in there. One thing that I've always wanted to do with Figma is that really what I'd like to do is save the texture at a certain blend mode to a swatch, but I want to be able to apply like two saved styles at once. So I'd like to be able to put in my pink my pink thing and then my noise texture on top of it. Imagine if it's a button and that button has a primary background, and then on top of that button, there's like a noise texture. I know I'm poking at a weakness, but I want to know what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, I mean, right now only a single style can be applied. I think it would be cool to be able to apply two. It's not something that we've done, but hopefully in the future. I don't. Yeah, it's just one of those things that I think that you bite off a certain level of complexity when you build like a V1 of the feature, and sometimes those things that would be really nice to have might not, like, it's not the biggest problem that you're solving, and so I think that's something that we think a lot about on our team, certainly in interfacing with the design team and PMs at Figma. Is just like this is like very topical because that feature smart are not smart selection colors. Marcin on the design team posted like a really excellent tweet thread that like goes through some of the thought process on like going through smart selection or selection colors. And what's really interesting about that is there were certain things that like that did not make V1, and then we listened to user feedback and built V2. But there's certain times where we'll scope things a certain way to solve one problem and then build on it over time, of course.
I would love to be able to drop that thread into here for people to
yeah,
to read.
I'll get that thread. It's a nice little window into sort of like how the team thinks about things.
Yeah, I think it's awesome. I read it yesterday as well, and I loved the sort of like when you're a team of designers designing for designers. I think it helps to build some empathy and understanding of what's going on internally in the Figma team. That a lot of these decisions have a lot of ripple effects throughout the UI and throughout sort of the programming of it. And there's complexities where you just don't think there would be complexities. And it's really cool to see him Marcin being so transparent about like, these were the struggles. And I think that's a really cool story for us to follow. Oh, yep, there it is. Thanks, man. There's the,
There was actually shadows. You want to show that shadow plugin?
Absolutely. I was just tracking on the same question. I have been using this one for quite a bit. I actually just used it yesterday. Let's get this. Is this the one? Is it Shadow Picker? Or is Tom?
I'm trying to remember which one it was.
Let me go back into my plugins and just see, because I know I had one that I've used Smooth. Oh, I get it. It's Smooth Shadow.
Smooth.
Yep. So the one I've used is Smooth Shadow. It's right here. Let me go ahead and copy that link and get it out to all of you.
Oh, I just pasted it too.
You're way ahead of me. You're the best Patrick Swayze in the world. So let's go ahead and say that we're building out a some kind of a card view, and it is just like every other interface. It has rounded borders and it's got a lovely white sheen. If I want to go ahead and I want to put a shadow on here, obviously I can just go to effects, boom, put a drop shadow. But this is a little bit of maybe it's not as natural feeling as a drop shadow as you'd like it to be. Maybe this is maybe you want to be able to add more complexity, more depth, more spread, more so than just the single. And I know as designers, a lot of times we're pretty smart and we'll go in here and we'll just add up a few of these, right? We'll just be like, okay, I want that one. And then we'll copy that, we'll paste that in there. And then we'll say, well, I want this one to be a little smaller. Maybe there's a little color in there. And I've done this, added like blues in those shadows and stuff. But one way of doing that is to just select your shape, go here and go to Smooth Shadow under your plugins. And you can see right here, there's all kinds of really cool things that you can tweak and mess with. So you can mess with the offset of that shadow, and you can see the effects of that. You can mess with the blur, and you can see that they're using like exponential or Bezier curves. Sorry, they're using Bezier curves, just like you might do in CSS to be able to specify like a linear gradient or something like that, or an easing function. So there's all kinds of shape dynamics here. You can also just build up the layers, and you can see that the drop shadow effects now are just going nuts. They're all over here. But you can create some really attractive ones. Once again, let's go back to that again and just see the default one. And then what I'd like to do is come over here and duplicate this object, back out a little bit for you all to see. And then let's, I'll just clear these and add in just a regular drop shadow. Sorry. And if we get in close, you can see the difference here. You can see that there's like almost like a ramping function to this. And this here, the blur seems more linear. Uh, and a lot of these easing functions or Bezier curves, when you put them on a shadow or you put them on a linear gradient, it can actually create a more natural fade as opposed to something that just looks computer generated. It looks more correct with lighting. So this is awesome. I've used it quite a bit. It's fantastic. You love this effect. You want to keep this. Don't keep running smooth shadow. Just take that thing, create something for it, and be like, this is my smooth shadow that I'm going to put on my cards. Boom. Now you want this old, decrepit, ugly shadow here. We hated it all along. Let's go ahead and just take that and add on smooth shadow. Boom. It's now
I love
saved
it.
in your effects. Cool. Let's go to the next plugin.
All right, I know we only have a few more minutes left, but one thing that I wanted to show is a plugin that uses the plugin relaunch API. So if we can demo a few ones really quickly because they're simple.
Okay.
But if you want to go and install one called To Do, I'll put the link in the chat. All one word. And one thing so a lot of people maybe haven't discovered this because not all of the plugins use it. And it's this, in this particular plugin, it's a to-do list that you can run. But when you have other people that you're working with in the document, it's sometimes nice to sort of like expose other people to the plugins that are being used because they may not already have that plugin installed. So actually, Rogie, do you want to uninstall that plugin? I'm just thinking through this.
Oh, it's really, yeah, I know what you're about to do, and I love it, and I support it. Let's go.
So I'm in the thing here. And on my end, I'm adding a list to this thing. Now, if you look in the sidebar, I just used the plugin, and this plugin leaves data in the document to tell the other people that this plugin was used. And if you look in Rogie's sidebar at the bottom right, there's a button there that says install to do. So if Rogie clicks on that, now other people in the document know that that plugin has been used. And so if you click on it, it'll prompt you to install it. And then once you install it, the install prompt will go away, and now you can just open to do, and then you'll see the list. And so there's the list. Tell Rogie he's cool. Rogie, you're cool. We can check that off now, and then it goes into the completed bin. So this is like a really nice thing. I built a plugin recently called Status Annotations. It uses the same sort of thing, and the Dice plugin that Rogie, you and I worked on, uses it. But there's a few other plugins like Notepad that use this API. Mapsicle is another great example that uses it. But it's really nice when other people can sort of be exposed and then update something that was maybe created by a particular plugin.
I loved how obviously it's not surprising that everything is happening live and instantly in Figma, but I loved that when you told me to uninstall it and I came back, as soon as you had installed it or used it, it popped it into my sidebar here. So like if I click the canvas, like I know what's happening here. Apparently text edit has been used here too. So that's left some data in here. I know that when we're creating games, your Dice plugin, it says install Dice. So you don't need it's great that it's a single source of truth with these files in the sense that everything is what you see and it's always live and it's always the current version. Not only that, it's always sort of updating with the current plugins that are needed to manipulate things in the document. Notice that right here, Tom's added in 2 more, so I can add Notepad, which is fantastic. Tom, I just thought of a really great idea. Next time we do something like this, why don't we just invite everyone into a document and then install all the plugins and use them? And then with this relaunch API, at least they can use them that way too.
Yeah, no, that's a really good idea. Now, so it's up to the plugin developer to implement that if it makes sense for their particular plugin, because some plugins just do something, they're not leaving sort of like any data in the document that the plugin needs. But I'm putting some links to some. Notepad is another one by Dustin Moreau. And then we've got another one, the Roll the Dice plugin was the one that you and I worked on that I think some people may have already seen. But if you're playing a board game or something in Figma, or maybe you want to just like leave that design decision to fate, that you can't decide between 2 things, you can you can run that.
Yeah, and I'm not sure if this one does it as well, but like timer, the timer plugin, which is a super simple plugin, but like if I type in 10 minutes on the screen, actually, I'm just trying to actually find some text here, 10:00, and I right click, go to plugins and go to timer, this should just start counting down. So I've found that like you can, uh, that you can that you can use a lot of these things. Like these aren't just for games. These aren't just gimmicks. You could use these for, uh, I don't know, squaring off with your design team, having fun with your design team, but maybe even doing challenges like this and just having an on the screen timer. Somebody asked, can multiple people roll that dice?
Yeah, so it when you hit roll the dice in the sidebar, it re-rolls the dice, but there's also an option where the plugin relaunch API surfaces on a selection too. So you could roll the selected dice. And so you could duplicate that dice and then multiple people could roll a dice at the same time. So if you were to select that, yeah, there you go. Yeah, you could just sort of like style it and then re-roll it. So it does work. There's probably some more features that I'm gonna build. We kind of built this as like, what did we build that in, like a morning? So there's probably some other features. We talked about having like a designated area where the dice get rolled that we could put them in.
Like a tray, right?
Like a little tray.
Mm-hmm.
So I'll probably implement that in the next week or so.
I think at this point we've talked through a lot of plugins, and I know that we have quite a few more, but I think that it would be really good to kind of scrub through some of this through the chat and answer some questions, Tom, as well as maybe if people have questions right now, they could just fire them off. How you feeling about that?
Yeah, sure. So I'm kind of going in reverse order. Someone's asking about when the link in the Canvas feature is coming. I don't want to give away anything, but like it's coming very soon. So stay tuned. Stay tuned, definitely. Maybe very soon. So yeah, stay tuned for that one. I'm going through a couple of the other ones too. Somebody asked about Themer. I think that's one of the plugins I was actually going to demo today.
Mm-hmm.
That was a plugin that I wrote. I actually sent you the credentials if you want to demo Themer. You just have to install it and then paste in the credentials that I sent you on Slack.
No problem.
then,
we can do that. That's.
And we can. So if you want to get set up from that, I'll.
Who is this Tom Lowry person?
That's me.
Oh, there he is. Okay.
Yeah, and another one. I know someone was commenting on the smooth shadow that you get a lot of decimal places in some of the shadow values that it generates. Yeah, I mean that might be. Just keep in mind too that like all of these plugins typically have a support link when you go into the plugin page. And so if you have a question or a feature request for a particular plugin that you like using, definitely reach out to the developers, because I know like it's felt really good from me as like someone who's built a few plugins to have somebody like either file an issue on GitHub or email me and say like, oh, it would be really cool if like Themer did this, and I've like integrated some of those features into it. So
yeah.
Another one of the questions I think was, does having lots of plugins bog down the workflow? It does not. So you can only run one plugin at a time, and plugins cannot like run permanently in the background. So installing a lot of plugins, really the only workflow thing that it might slow you down on is like picking one from the menu, because the menu gets long. That's why that like command / trick is really handy. And I think there was a question for the relaunch API. Can you add the ability for a plugin to launch another plugin? Not currently, but I think that's a cool feature that we could potentially consider. Consider doing for sure.
It'd be cool if like CodePen, there were a way that you could tap into another plugin's API, and if a plugin had an API that you could potentially use it. Like for instance, in this fish situation, obviously I don't want to go recreate the technology to analyze an image, but I know it's in there and I know the code's in there to be able to give me color values for that. So it might be interesting if that could happen.
Yeah. Cool. So I think you installed Themer.
I've got it. Yep, I've got it going.
Yeah, so if you run Themer, and then I sent you some stuff on Slack. So this plugin works is that it uses an outside data source to just store values about your styles. And so you can go to a website called jsonbin.io. All of this sort of like there's links to it when you go through the little onboarding.
Do you want me
But
to hide
basically,
the API key from being on screen?
no, it's cool.
Oh my goodness,
It's
here we
gonna
go.
get-
We're going rogue.
And then you save the settings, and then on that particular key that Rogie loaded in, I already have some themes that I've created. But what it does is it basically creates a theme name that's affiliated with a bunch of your colors, and you can define things like light and dark, or maybe you have different text styles for different languages or something like that. So if Rogie was to select all of those analytics frames, or just one of them, or whatever you want,
I'll just do one. Okay.
yep, and then just click on that you want to see the light mode for this particular frame. Just hit light and then click apply. And then it will, it should, it may not work for you because I just realized that you may not have permission to the library that I set Themer up with, but I'll demo it from my end. So just imagine Rogie is me, and then you click apply, and then that generates the light or dark mode.
Oh, nice.
And so, yeah, and so one of the things that I also wanted to sort of demo in relation to Themer is a different plugin that's not mine, called Style References. As you get into creating themes, one of the things that you'll probably think about is like your naming conventions for different styles, so that you might have your primitives, which you sometimes name by their hue. So you have like a red and a blue, and then you may have like more semantically named styles. So you might have an alias for that color. So green is like button background. And so when you get into theming, you'll definitely want to come up with some sort of like naming structure for your styles. So if you want to run style references, I can show you how that one works as well.
Great. I've got it open and I've already shared the plugin.
Cool. So if you create a style in the document, like let's just say you created one called gray.
Okay. Well, we have pink noise. Does that work?
We could use pink noise. Okay. So if you go to selection, the selection tab there, you have to select something, I believe, that has that.
Okay, let's see here. We'll just create this as like we'll call this primary. We'll call this light primary. Then.
So inside this plugin, when you go to selection, or might be contexts, I can't remember. I believe you have to go back to selection. You have to thing on the canvas for it to pop up.
So I have to be like on that thing with the style. Okay.
Exactly. So you'll see there, it's like pulling in that it's got light primary, and now you can create another style that's based on that style. So let's just say you called this something else. So you can imagine you have like your primitives. This is purple, this is red, and now you want to have something like this is nav, like light / navbar background or something.
Okay, we'll do
that.
Then
what it will do is it will create another style that's like a duplicate of that style. So if you do everything on the canvas, you'll see that there's two styles now in the sidebar that look the same. And if you were to go back into light primary and then update that, like change like a slightly different, maybe something really obvious for everyone watching, like red
or neon
or green,
putrid green.
Exactly. You'll see that they both updated, because when you have this plugin running, it can auto update any style that's based on the original one. So one thing that like you can consider doing is like you could create all of your primitives and then create other styles that are based on them, because I think once you get into stuff, you end up having multiple like aliases that reference the same primary color, and then this way you just have to maintain your hues, and then you can generate those aliases based on other styles in the document. So it's a whole rabbit hole to go down into in terms of theming. I've done a lot of thought of like where I want to take Themer and do things in the future, but it gets pretty complicated depending on what your use case is. But hopefully these are useful plugins.
Yeah, I could totally see this having use to it as well, just because you may have like a color system where you've set up where you have a primary color, and for a certain iteration of your product or the thing that you're designing, maybe you do want the buttons to have that primary color, and you also have the nav bar to have that primary color. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the nav bar should always be that color. Like maybe it's just referencing it right now, but in the future iterations, you're like, you know what? I don't want to do that. I want to unlink it. I don't want to have to change primary to change everything.
Exactly. And I know I'm at time. I have to drop off soon, but I'll just answer a couple of questions that came in. Someone said, is Themer support only through GitHub? You can file an issue in GitHub, or you can email me, just tom@figma.com. Typically, I just have them go through GitHub just because I work on this on my personal time. It's not like a Figma initiated project, but yeah, feel free to email me. The other thing is make sure, if you're going to use Themer, make sure you publish your styles. The idea and why Themer was built the way that it was so that you can share the credentials with your other team members, and everyone can pull from the same set of themes. So that's a really important part. So publish your styles, and that's usually the hang up that some people have when it's not working. So yeah, hopefully that helps.
Okay.
I feel like we could do like 4 more of these.
I know. There's so much.
How many plugins there are now? So
Yeah.
if people want to see some other plugin workflows, we could totally put together another one of these.
Sounds like there's the need for it. Tom, thanks for everything. Thanks for coming in and sharing all your plugins. Thanks for joining in office hours.
Yeah, that was a lot of fun. Thanks for having me, Rogie. One last question there. Is there a plugin for picking colors and scaling them like in Material? I believe there's a whole bunch of plugins around color. One that comes to mind, I believe, is called Color Kit. Yeah, Color Kit. It'll create like darker versions of like stepped colors. So start there, and I'm sure there's some other ones that do that. So
great.
Cool.
I'll stay on just a bit and try to demo Color Kit. I'll let you hop off, and we'll see what Color Kit does, and then we'll be done with this stream.
Thanks for having me, Rogie.
Hey, dude. Thanks for jumping on.
See you later.
All right. Bye.
Bye, all.
All right. So we're just going to see. I've never done this, but we're going to go ahead and demo it. We've got this color, this purple color, and I'm going to go ahead and go to plugins like a caveman instead of going up here and just typing in Color Kit. You would imagine that. See how quickly I learn. Okay, so it says enter the base color, and I'm kind of inferring or hoping that this is coming from this, even though we don't know what this is. Nope, it's actually not. So let's try this again. Let's go here. Let's go to Color Kit. And it looks like it's not, which is a little bit unfortunate, but it looks like maybe it's not meant to be with a selection. Maybe that's an upgrade they could do, but we'll go ahead and enter that in. And let's say we want 10 shades. We're going to darken by this amount. Boom, let's go. Looks like that's a pretty cool thing. It's just darkening that shade. Interestingly enough, another way that you might be able to go about this is just take all these objects, and you can actually hit down, shift and down on these. So let's just see if I'm going to kind of pseudo create my own. I would probably do down twice next time, but I'm sort of ramping down the shades. I believe that it was Lift that had a design system out there, and I'm not sure if Lift has done any plugins, but I know they had a really, really interesting color system, and I think that that might be worth looking into. Heck, that might be a great thing to turn into a plugin as their little color system. Looks like Lyft didn't do anything here, but that would be pretty gnarly if they brought in their whole color system. Thanks again, everybody, for coming in. I'm going to grab a bite to eat, and thanks for joining us while we shared plugins. This is Office Hours. Just letting you know that we're also going to be having a Fig Match this Friday, which is just sort of a fun designer thing where we square off 2 designers against each other. I know that next Monday we're going to be continuing my Build It in Figma, and then so every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday we have events that are going on. We have live streams that are going on. We also have additional webinars that are going on where we bring in industry leaders. So just letting you know. Oh, somebody just shared Command D to duplicate with the same distance. That is a great suggestion. Thank you, Java J. So figma.com/events, we're really starting to ramp up and put all these things in. You can add them to your calendar, so go ahead and do that. Thank you for tuning in. Also, if any of you, I believe I saw a question and I didn't want to miss it. If any of you have a question about this, they said, oh, you have a really cool plugins interface. And this looks a little bit different than your plugins interface. This is because this is the community beta. So Figma's created a community beta product that now has the ability not only to share plugins, but also your files. You can duplicate these files, work with them. Here's a great one by Joey Banks, who's one of our designer advocates and probably the kindest human you've ever met in your life. But if you come in here, you can see that what Joey's put together is a bunch of starter elements for you to start your design system on. You don't need this aesthetic, but it's been all thought through. So if you want to go ahead and take things out or add them, or if you want to add some additional text here, it's all been thought out with auto layout. Pretty rad. It's good for swapping and things like that. It's got tooltips. These tooltips are all built with a master tooltip system, so you can actually bring in a bottom and a top and a left and a right little beak. Anyways, the Figma community beta is awesome, and it's got all kinds of new resources being added every day that kind of give you a little bit of a jump start. There's icons and design systems and all kinds of things. If you would like to be invited to that, just shoot me an email, arking@figma.com, for a Figma community beta invite, and I'd be happy to get you in. I'd be happy to let you try it out, and share whatever it is you want to share, but also just like take advantage of the resources that are here. It's still in beta because we're still working out the kinks in it, still trying to figure out, get feedback from you all, and understand what other things that we can do to improve it before it's actually ready to go. Thank you so much, everybody, for coming in. I'm going to sign off now. So have a great one, and until the next time, see you later.